mining facilities reported cases of vandalism. Workers have also raised complaints about poor treatment, which in some cases escalated into clashes. These
但
events
自
have
2020
drawn the
年以来，
attention
这个
of
地
both
区共有
governments
7个
and international observers, who are now calling for dialogue to ease tensions. Governments have repeatedly stepped in to restore order, but mistrust between locals and foreign investors continues to grow. For many Africans, these incidents symbolize a fight against exploitation, not just isolated outbursts. Mali, a landlocked country in the very heart of West Africa. On the surface, it might not look like a key player on the global economic stage. Yet for international mining giants, especially those from China, this nation is nothing less than a hidden treasure chest. Mali possesses enormous gold reserves, nearly 900 tons in total, making it the third largest gold holder in Africa, only behind South Africa and Ghana. In 2021 alone, Mali extracted 63 tons of gold, representing almost 7% of the world's production. To put it simply, gold is the lifeblood of this nation. It accounts for over 80% of Mali's exports and provides 1/4 of the government's total revenue. It is precisely this golden potential that drew waves of foreign investment. Since Mali officially joined China's Belt and Road Initiative in July 2019, money from Beijing has poured in at an unprecedented rate. In less than 6 years, Chinese enterprises, from giant state-owned conglomerates to small private firms, invested more than $1.22 billion into nearly 100 different projects across the country. In the gold sector alone, Chinese companies now control more than half of Mali's total output, roughly 36 tons annually. Their mines are spread across regions such as Nioro, Bougouni, and parts of the Central Plateau. But the appetite of Chinese investors did not stop at gold. They also turned their attention to lithium, a mineral more valuable than gold in the modern era, as it powers electric vehicles and the batteries of the future. The best example is the Goulamina project, fully acquired by China's Ganfeng Lithium Group for $342 million. This site is advertised as the largest lithium mine in Africa, with reserves reaching 211 million tons of ore. In terms of global ranking, it stands second only to Australia's massive Pilgangoora mine, holding an equivalent of 7.1 million tons of lithium carbonate. On paper, this looks like a perfect win-win scenario. China secures its supply of strategic minerals, while Mali gains much-needed investment capital and jobs. But when you look closer, the story is far more complicated. The reality at ground level is brutal. Across Mali's goldfields, thousands of impoverished men, women, and even children flock to open-pit mines. They fight over piles of sand, hoping that by sifting through, they might glimpse the shine of a tiny gold particle. For them, this isn't opportunity. It's survival. Skilled hands swirl muddy water in battered pans, watching lighter grains of sand wash away until finally a speck of gold flashes at the bottom. A lucky miner might make a few hundred win in a day. A very fortunate few could strike enough gold to earn thousands. But such miracles are rare. Despite Mali's immense mineral wealth, the people who live closest to these mines remain trapped in poverty. Basic healthcare and education are severely underfunded. Villages are surrounded not by prosperity, but by dust, noise, and toxic waste from the mines. Locals complain that the riches are being hauled away in trucks, while their own lives show little improvement. This has fueled deep resentment, creating an invisible yet growing divide between the indigenous population and the foreign investors, most of whom are Chinese. And then came the breaking point. From May to August 2025, Mali's security situation spiraled out of control. In less than 3 months, a series of violent attacks targeted Chinese-owned or Chinese-backed projects. On May 12th, armed militants stormed a construction site near Gao. 2 Chinese workers were kidnapped, and several construction vehicles were doused in fuel and burned until nothing but twisted metal remained. Just days later, on May 23rd, the heavily guarded Bougouni gold mine was attacked in the dead of night. 5 Chinese employees were taken hostage, and expensive machinery worth millions of dollars was deliberately destroyed. A survivor, Mr. Thu, who worked for the mining company in Bougouni, described the terrifying scene. It was around 3 or 4 in the morning. Most of us were still asleep when the shooting started. We had no time to react. 2 of my colleagues were captured. The attackers demanded a ransom of $3 million for each of them. What was once advertised as a land of opportunity has now turned into a battlefield. Mali, with its hidden treasures, has become both a blessing and a curse, a golden prize that fuels conflict, resentment, and danger. And for China, the dream of securing Africa's resources is now colliding head-on with the harsh realities of violence and instability. The situation soon escalated to the point where the Chinese embassy in Mali had no choice but to release an urgent directive. This was not a suggestion or a friendly warning. It was a strict order. Every Chinese company operating in the goldfields was told to halt their work immediately, evacuate their workers to the capital Bamako, and report their status to the embassy. The message was crystal clear: obey or face the consequences at your own risk. But leaving the conflict zone was far easier said than done. The main road stretched over 400 kilometers, cutting straight through territory controlled by armed factions. The alternative, evacuation by air, was hardly better since the available planes could carry only about 500 people per day. Sure, or leave everything behind and accept devastating losses. Many chose the second option. What followed was nothing short of a massive self-destruction campaign. Heavy machinery worth millions of dollars was deliberately sunk into rivers or buried in pits. Company servers were smashed, hard drives shredded, and microchips destroyed one by one. Workers were even told to wipe every photo from their phones, fearing that even a single leaked image could expose valuable information to armed groups. By the time the evacuation was complete, damages had soared past 100 million US dollars. And yet, business leaders admitted that destroying their own assets was still preferable to letting them fall into enemy hands. Because once advanced equipment or sensitive data was seized, the consequences could be catastrophic. This drastic decision revealed a new reality. Chinese enterprises overseas were no longer passive victims of conflict. Instead, they had learned to sacrifice profits in exchange for survival. The incident also highlighted a darker truth. In Mali, every gold mine was more than just an industrial site. It was a potential battlefield where wealth and blood were intertwined. To understand why violence flared so intensely, we must look back at Mali's political turmoil over the last decade. In 2012, a coup toppled the civilian government, plunging the country into chaos and leaving northern Mali under rebel control. France, the former colonial power, deployed thousands of troops to combat extremist groups. But nearly a decade later, in 2021, another coup ousted the pro-French administration. Within months, Mali expelled the French ambassador, and by early 2022, French forces had fully withdrawn. What followed was a dangerous vacuum, one that Russia's Wagner mercenaries quickly moved in to fill, alongside the growing presence of Chinese businesses. Rather than bringing order, this mix of military rule, Russian mercenaries, and foreign corporate interests only deepened tensions. To local insurgents like the al-Qaeda-linked JNIM militia, Chinese projects were no longer just mining sites. They were symbols of outside control, political leverage, and above all, easy financial targets. Hostages could be ransomed for millions, while sabotaging equipment sent a powerful message to both the Malian government and Beijing. Matters worsened in 2023 when a new mining law forced foreign investors to hand 35% of their projects to the Malian state and raised royalty fees from 6% to 9%. Not only did this cut corporate profits, it also fueled resentment among local communities who saw almost no improvement in their daily lives. In fact, over 1 million Malians still depend on artisanal or illegal mining, many scraping a living with bare hands and rudimentary tools. With the military regime tightening its grip, countless small miners were pushed to desperation, some eventually joining armed groups that promised both income and protection. Against this backdrop, every Chinese-run mine became a flashpoint, a place where politics, money, and bloodshed collided. For opposition forces, attacking these projects was not just about money, it was about symbolism, showing that neither foreign companies nor the government could guarantee safety. And so, what began as a golden opportunity has transformed into a chilling reality. The same gold rush that once lured Chinese companies into Mali with dreams of fortune has now turned into a nightmare. Every truckload of ore, every shipment of gold carries with it the shadow of danger. In the dark silence of the Malian night, every echo of gunfire could mark the beginning of yet another attack. The promise of wealth has become inseparable from the risk of violence. And for many Chinese enterprises, Mali is no longer a land of opportunity, but a battlefield disguised as a mine. Angola is on fire. Anti-China chaos is sweeping across Africa. Factories burn, businesses collapse, and Beijing is rushing to get its people out. This is China Truths, where we bring you the news and stories that Chinese state media hides. According to the news we just received, in Angola's industrial heartland, black smoke spirals into the sky. Crowds storm Chinese-owned factories and shops, tearing down shutters, smashing windows, and setting warehouses ablaze. What started as a single labor dispute has exploded into a continental rebellion. From Tanzania to Kenya to South Africa, anti-China unrest is spreading like wildfire. For 2 decades, Beijing pumped billions into Africa, roads, railways, ports, even entire industrial parks, all built in exchange for oil, minerals, and strategic influence. Angola, rich with resources, became one of Beijing's crown jewels in the Belt and Road Empire. Chinese companies won the big projects. Chinese workers arrived in droves, and Chinese traders quickly dominated local markets. On the surface, it looked like a win-win. But beneath the glossy promises, resentment was festering. African workers complained of long hours, unsafe conditions, and being passed over for promotions. Communities accused Chinese-run projects of polluting rivers and stripping land bare. For years, governments that relied on Chinese loans brushed these voices aside. But then came the rise of social media. Videos of clashes, land grabs, and abusive managers went viral, igniting anger far beyond local borders. In Angola, that anger finally exploded. A strike at a Chinese textile factory turned violent after security guards reportedly attacked workers. Within hours, the protest transformed into full-blown riots against Chinese businesses. Police couldn't control the crowds. By the second day, Luanda looked like a war zone. Charred factories, gutted storefronts, and streets filled with looted goods. And it didn't stop there. In Tanzania's Dar es Salaam, crowds stormed port facilities run by Chinese contractors. In Kenya, activists rallied against foreign exploitation. In South Africa, demonstrations turned violent. Across the continent, one spark had lit a fire Beijing could no longer ignore. As evacuation flights began leaving Angola, it became clear. This was no longer just a local crisis. It was a continent-wide uprising threatening not only China's investments, but its entire grip on Africa's future. In Kenya, chaos erupted at Mombasa's Chinese-built industrial park. Protesters blocked access roads, torched delivery trucks across the central business district, while police later admitted they had focused on safeguarding embassies instead of private businesses. South Africa witnessed the most organized escalation. In Johannesburg, powerful labor unions staged massive rallies outside Chinese logistics centers, accusing Beijing of crushing local industries and bringing in near-slave labor practices. Clashes soon broke out with private security forces, leaving multiple people injured and prompting the shutdown of several Chinese warehouses. Beijing wasted no time in reacting. The foreign ministry issued urgent warnings to Chinese nationals, labeling Africa a high-risk zone. Charter flights were dispatched, and even naval transport ships were sent to evacuate citizens from Angola, Tanzania, and Kenya. State media broadcasted emotional scenes of families boarding evacuation planes, portraying them as victims of anti-foreign hysteria, while carefully avoiding any mention of the deeper grievances fueling the uprising. African leaders now find themselves cornered. On one side, the public is demanding an end to what they see as exploitation by Chinese companies. On the other, governments remain deeply tied to Beijing through loans, trade, and infrastructure projects. Official statements denounce violence, but quietly press China to resolve labor disputes and environmental abuses. Meanwhile, economic disruptions are spreading. Port blockades in Kenya and Tanzania are delaying food and goods shipments, while Angola's mining operations are stalling as Chinese engineers flee. Investors